Good evening, everybody. At 6 p.m., we're going to call the Oak Creek Fire Protection District Pension Board of Trustees meeting, regular meeting, Thursday, July 13th. We do this every month. For those, I see a lot of new faces, but we do this every month. Colt, since you're already standing, sure. Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That's what you get for being the last seat. Welcome, everybody. No need for a roll call of members. I see all are here. Thank you all very much.
Recording in progress.
Thank you all very much. Summertime is always difficult to get away and to ensure that we are able to make meetings and everything, so thank you all for being here and the public as well. I'll ask my fellow board members if there's any additions, deletions for the minutes for the agenda, beg your pardon. Any additions or deletions for the agenda? Last time. Additions, deletions? All right, we'll take that as an approval of the agenda. I'll ask my board members to review the April 2023 meeting minutes.
I did not lead the Pledge of Allegiance at the April 13th meeting.
That was me.
Oh, you? You, Director, too?
Right.
Can we
Any
put a
additions?
point of clarification in there then, since there's two of us, okay to me? As amended.
What issue? Just clarifying the pledge?
Yeah,
Okay, so make
since
sure we
they're,
don't confuse.
both of us have the same name
Right.
and I don't get confused again in the future. Just like I was in here.
Okay. Any other additions or deletions to the meeting minutes from April 2023? Last time, deletions or additions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the April 2023 Elk Creek Fire Protection District Pension Board meeting of trustees? We have one by Mr. Kevin, and we have a second by Ms. Sharon. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Old business. Yeah. I hate to do it, but again, I do not have confirmation from Ms. Feely did not for July, so we could not put her in our regular meeting agenda. So we will, as a point of old business, work to try to get here for our October pension board meeting, and I will continue to work on that. That is the only old business that I have. Is anybody aware of any other old business that we might be missing? All right, that moves us to the next agenda item in new business, the first quarter 2023 allocation report. And Ms. Barb is not here. Chief, are you going to fill us in on that, or?
No, she did not pass that down to me. I apologize.
Okay, so we'll have to table that and until the next quarter, and we'll address both the first and the second quarter allocation report at that time. And perhaps if we can get Ms. Feely scheduled, she'll be able to give us greater insight on that as well. So we'll table that new item. All right. That moves us to the second item under new business, and that's the pension approval for Ms. Lori Kraft Dharmafall. Is that correct? Did I pronounce it correctly? All right, this is exciting. Do we have any, do we need a motion before we get started, or is there, do you want to clarify the eligibility of Ms. Dharmafall?
Yes, historically, usually the fire chief confirms the eligibility, and then the board will make the motion to award the volunteer pension to the individual.
And you confirm Ms. Dharmafall has fulfilled all
That
of
is
her
correct,
requirements?
yes. Dharmafall, or, yes. I always knew her as Lori Kraft, so she became Dharmafall.
Or
But,
Lori Kraft, oh,
yes,
okay.
Lori Kraft Dharmafall did meet all of the requirements for the pension.
Right, well, that's exciting as she moves through her career or finishes her career as a volunteer. Do I have a motion from my fellow board members or trustees for the pension approval of Ms. Lori Kraft Dharmafall?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Devaney,
I'll second.
second. Second by Colt. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? That motion carries. Congratulations, Ms. Kraft Dharmafall.
Can I have a minute on that? I talked to Lori today. She said she tried to put her request in late last year because her birthday was in January. And so she would have been eligible since January. Is she getting her full pension, or does it start from now?
Not sure. We'll have to confer with FPPA on that. I would imagine that it will be retroactive to the point of her retirement, as it is with most firefighters, but and police officers, those that are a part of that pension program, but that'll have to be something that we confirm. We could,
I'm gonna have her write a letter. She said she got the run around by several people here, and Chief knows about it. He took care of it. After several attempts, he finally took care of it. But she should be retroactive to January, as far as I can understand.
yeah. And again, you're speaking to the pension board, not to the FPPA. So what we'll do is we'll have to defer that back and ensure that she is benefited from that from that eligible point. So that is about all we can do as a board, is just defer that. Chief, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I spoke with her, and I thought that was all taken care of. I didn't realize she has the runaround. I have emails from her. I didn't realize I was giving her the runaround.
No, she didn't say you specifically. She said when she tried to apply, she was at first denied by someone off the staff, and it took her several tries to get through to you specifically before it got taken care of.
As a point of order, Ms. Devaney, can we rescind that? Then make another motion
Absolutely.
to ensure, because you were the motion maker,
Mhm.
can we rescind that motion, restate the motion to either address the most, how would we phrase that, so that she, at the earliest time possible to receive the pension, so that we know that this board is in support of her not missing eligibility for any number of months. Chief, looks like you have some statement.
No, I was just checking. Yeah, I believe she turned 50 in the middle of January.
Mr. Camille, you're right over here. We have we lost your chair. We'll get another chair for you.
I will gladly rescind my motion. For point of record, Mr. Bartlett, can you have her write a letter to the board so that we can have that for backup?
I'll take care of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll have it.
Yeah.
I think in light of the possibilities, and we don't want her to not receive something. I know that's a double negative. We want her to receive everything that she's eligible.
Entitled to.
Anything sort.
Beg your pardon? Is that Al talking to me?
Your
or is everybody muted?
internet's on the struggle bus, Jake, just so you know.
Is it? I
Yeah.
don't know what else to do.
So
All right, so let's start that again.
Yeah, I move that Ms. Kraft Dharmafall receive her pension backdated to the most eligible point that we can provide for her on that pension. Did I cover it?
I believe so.
Okay.
The motion's on the floor, second by Director Woods. Any discussion on the motion? None? I think we all see the intent needed here. All right, without any discussion, I will call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? That motion carries. Thank you. All right, now we move to, thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Now we move to item number 3, pension board election. It was made, we were made aware that we were out of timing with the pension board election, and we've done some work in the last 3 months. One of which was having discussions with the association so that we could get the appropriate trustees in place, correct the ill timing that has been created due to the lack of the last election. And then next month, I believe, Mr. Camille, as a point of information, since we have quarterly meetings for the pension board, do we need to have nominations for pension board trustees at the quarterly meetings, or can it take place at the next regularly scheduled board of directors meeting?
So I would probably suggest, since it's a matter of pension board business, that a special pension board meeting be scheduled. That would be the cleanest way to have that in front of the pension board. And then, so I mean, it would essentially, you'd post, similarly to how you would the quarterly meetings, it would just be posted as a special meeting of the pension board at the beginning of the next regular meeting.
All right. And then that would be when we receive any nominations for those trustee positions.
Yes.
It sounds like something very simple that we might be able to do via Zoom.
Or just at the, do we need to? So the position ends at the end of this calendar year, or this?
No,
fiscal
I
year?
believe both positions end. No, just one position ends. So to keep on track, we need to ensure that we. Now, if I remember correctly, one of the pension board positions, the trustee position, is already. We should have had an election for that. Am I correct?
April was the normal.
Yeah, that's right. So I think we're a little behind.
Okay,
And that in doing so, we can select a position for the one that we are behind to ensure that we can stay in the leapfrog approach of one every other year. I know that there have been discussions that if through acclamation, Colt was to maintain his position, he would defer to the current schedule that we are creating right now to allow for that leapfrog to continue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So we have a remedy in the mix to allow for us to continue this, even though we missed the April election. But we'll need a special meeting that will be announced, and we'll probably I'll work with my fellow trustees and my board members to schedule that so we can get a quick Zoom meeting, and then we will get the nomination information out, not only to the association, but Friends of the Elk Creek Protection District, to your, you had said Chief Aronson had already been working on this as well, is that correct? One, I think.
Email list.
Yeah, on the email list. So there's already an informal announcement that there's a pension board position that's going to come to, that will be eligible for nomination. And I'm willing to, if anybody has any other suggestions about how we get back on track, I will certainly entertain them. Yes, sir.
Rather than have a Zoom meeting, why not just schedule a pension board meeting for our next regular monthly meeting?
That might be a good idea. Mr. Camille, do you have any issues with that?
No? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that would make it a lot easier.
A lot easier.
Beg your pardon.
So the new person won't be voted in until April then, is that what I'm understanding?
No, we'll have the election as soon as we meet the obligations of the nominations in the election period. We'll get this trustee position on track, and then we'll have the next trustee position, leapfrog, which is your position, which should be April, am I correct?
Is that starting in April or ending? Mine was ending in April.
Ending in April, whatever that timing is. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I want us to get caught back up on that. And you believe that your term ends at the end of April, so we'll have to, in January, our first trustee board meeting, accept nominations. We'll be sure to have that list out, or that notification, nominations being accepted at that board meeting well enough ahead of time that we can ensure that your position is not behind. All right, any, yes, sir?
Yes. So one other issue was brought up last time, and that was regarding our bylaws for the pension board.
Yes.
Has there been any work done on that?
The most current version is from the 2012.
Right, so
For the pension levels.
do they need to be updated is, I think was the question.
Yes, I believe it's something that's 10 years old we need to address, but there has been no work on updating the bylaws. But as actually, why don't, as board president, I will assign a committee, and actually, I think you two gentlemen would be the best. And I would charge you with going through the bylaws, and do I have a volunteer from one of the directors that would be willing to assist in this effort so that we can try to get these bylaws up to date as soon as possible? All three of you? All right.
I probably should not, given that Kevin
Okay, I
is.
got it.
Kevin,
All
yeah,
right.
I'm willing to help, but I should not be the one. I'm willing to defer.
Sure.
Okay. So our,
Was it you? Which one have you decided?
so it, I think it was,
Either one.
Yeah.
So,
I will do it.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
I believe Georgia maybe, yes.
so the committee assigned is Kevin Cole, Director Newby, for the evaluation of the existing pension board bylaws and to create or update as necessary. Create new new issues or new items or correct anything.
Just to update them.
Exactly, that's
And we
probably
would
a better
work
way.
with Mr. Camille to do that.
Yeah, that's certainly fine.
Right, perfect. All right, so just to update the bylaws, that's the
Just
best
to
way to
update.
phrase it.
Yes.
All right. That is the last,
Did you want me to read the article for the nominations? Did you want that information?
yes, if you would.
So 2 volunteer firefighters in active service, retired service, or active retired volunteers. Members of the district board shall serve on the pension board for terms equal to their tenure on the district board. The 2 volunteer firefighters shall be elected by the terms beginning in alternate years. In the event that a volunteer resigns, otherwise is unable or ineligible to serve his or her term of office, the remaining members of the pension board shall, within 90 days, by a majority vote, appoint a successor from the district volunteer firefighters to serve until the next regular election of such member.
Thank you for that point of information. I'm glad you found it. All right, that takes us to agenda item 8. Is there any other business to be brought before the pension board?
So this kind of continues with the last, with the election thing. I thought there's quite a few people today that are retired Elk Creek that haven't been contacted in over 10 years. We got a little stipend in probably a couple of years ago when Ed Oleski was on the board. We got a little bump in our retirement. And with looking at the financial situation of this retirement account and the current situation of the U.S. economy, I think it's a good idea to start upping these pensions for retired firefighters.
Duly noted. We'll that's nothing that we'll be able to address until we've had an opportunity to evaluate the coffers and to ensure that we have an idea about how much we can, if any, to that effort.
So the actuary said it was funded at 125% in January, and from January to the first quarter, it looks like it's gone up by about $100,000. Yeah, I think it's weird that we have a pension meeting and nobody has any of the information that's supposed to be a pension meeting, like the details of the account. And so what good is a pension meeting if we can't talk about what we're supposed to talk about?
Details are all right here.
Well, let's talk about it.
So I thought we made some.
I don't know how many people in the room are actually retirees or in the pension plan. I mean, this is supposed to be the meeting for the people that are in the plan.
Right, so what's the
And so
first
personally,
manner
I
of?
haven't gotten to vote in over 10 years for my representative. And I'm here, I live 2 blocks away from here, and I come to pension meetings, and I haven't gotten to vote for over 10 years. So you're trying to put something straight that hasn't been straight in an awful long time.
And it's a
And
great
we're talking about
opportunity
putting
for
it
us to move
straight
forward to
next
ensure
year.
that we're not missing people like you. I know that.
But you're pushing it off till next year.
No, we're putting it straight next month.
Disrespectful.
So what we'll do, Mike, if you know other people that are not getting this information, we'll work to.
Nobody's getting the information.
Well, I believe there are some. Chief Aronson had mentioned that there was an email bank. I can't speak on his behalf, but it sounds like that there is some type of database of names. But that's something that certainly is important for us to ensure that all the retirees have an opportunity to have a vote in this effort.
I've been arguing that point for years now, that I've not gotten any information from this pension board ever, unless I actually show up at a meeting and directly ask for it. I've never gotten one email.
And do you have other people that are in the same boat, Mr. Bartlett? Because
Everybody I talked to today.
perfect, so you have a list of people, so we
I
can
have a few
start and we
people
can
that I-
try to expand that
Pension
notification
board
out there.
has the list of all of the people. I don't have that. And so that's, in that sense, I told all these people I talked to, I'm willing to represent all these people, because they're not being represented.
Yeah, and that's a great start. I know sometimes, I'm not sure why people aren't getting it. Perhaps it's a change of address, emails, phone numbers, any number. I could imagine there's a number of possibilities, but it is important for us to ensure that people are getting information so that, as in the case with Ms. Lori Kraft Darmafal, we can continue to maintain this important aspect of Elk Creek Fire Protection, and that's our retired volunteers and our active volunteers.
So there's no intent on discontinuing the volunteer pension program?
There's no intent on what, I'm sorry?
Discontinuing the pension program?
Oh, no, not, there's never been a discussion on that, not amongst my time on this board, or I think Ms. Woods is the closest in tenure to mine. I don't ever.
So a quote from the Triton report, page 177. The line item titled volunteer retirement comes from the current obligations. However, this will not be increased as Triton agrees with ECFPD's position to discontinue this. So who is ECFPD
What's that?
that has this position to discontinue the volunteer pension program?
What's the date on that document?
This is the Triton report.
The trade report was recommendations or.
The Triton report was recommendations. They recommended a number of things. We're not obligated to do anything.
Who in ECFPD
Obviously,
are they agreeing with?
I don't exactly know who the
So
agreement.
that's what I would like to know, that somebody at the ECFD is making these decisions not in public, behind my back, for sure. I had to read it on page 177 of this report, that you are planning on discontinuing the pension program.
I can guarantee you, Mr. Bartlett, in my time on this board, never once has there been a discussion about this. The recommendations from the Triton report are exactly that, recommendations. The board has shifted a number of times. I'm the last remaining member, I think, that was a part of that period, and they darn sure didn't talk to me. But if anybody amongst, and I'll speak on behalf of my fellow board members and trustees, the last thing we're going to do is take away an earned benefit from the retired volunteers and the volunteers that are working to protect this. And I'm passionate about this, and I'll work with you if necessary to find out what we have to do, but we're not going to get rid of it. If anything, as you mentioned, we are going to do things to reimburse and supplement the disadvantage that we have due to this terrible.
And I would appreciate if you look into who it was.
I can, but we've had a change of administration, we've had multiple changes, and I'm assuming, and I don't know, but it was somebody else. It's not on this board now, and it darn sure wasn't me. And Chief, was it you?
Absolutely not.
Yes.
The former fire chief did mention that, as I'm sure you're aware. That was mentioned. I don't even remember when it was. I'm totally opposed to that. That will never happen, as long as I have anything to say about it. And I believe that the board has the same thing. Who that was, I don't know, but it's not correct.
So considering a merger, what happens to our pension board?
Merge. Are you referring to the possible consolidation?
Yes.
Yeah, the possible, but that will have to be determined. Actually, can I defer this one to you, Mr. Camille, how that would work if there was a possibility that, or if the consolidation came to fruition?
So as of right now, generally what happens is that the funds, unless there's an agreement of all three pensions, in this case three, to actually merge it, the funds would stay separate, so that the obligations would all stay separate still. And what you do is you create a consolidated pension board that guarantees representation from each fund. So you'd ideally have then a single board, pension board, where you'd have three distinct funds still to monitor. So the benefits would stay the same across the three, the volunteer membership and qualifications would stay the same, but you would have a single board that would monitor that. So you'd have still that same level of oversight, but nothing should change as far as your benefit entitlement or the fund, unless there's a determination down the line. There is the potential in the statute to actually merge the funds, but that would have to be actually go out to the vote of all of the volunteer members to determine if there was actually the financial viability to make that change in the fund itself. But generally speaking, right now the plan would be that there'd be no change to each of the funds at all. You just have them under a single board umbrella.
Because the qualifications for each district right now aren't the same.
Right. Yeah, so ultimately, the pension board, if the consolidation happened, the pension board would have to monitor those differently. So if you had, an Elk Creek member apply, it would be under that fund, and it would only come out of that fund, and it would be based on the qualifications for the Elk Creek pension fund. So it would be insular still, you just have a single board overseeing it.
And so there would be another one created for the Conifer Fire District. Would be another volunteer fire?
Yeah, if you ended up having a volunteer program still for the Conifer Mountain, you'd potentially have an
They just said that they were planning on continuing this.
Right, so I don't know the status of the volunteers as far as the volunteer program. If there's going to continue to be volunteers, then you likely could organize it in staying within the same funds, or you could discuss having a new fund. Like if you're going to have new volunteers come on solely under the Conifer Fire Protection District, then you would have to create a separate fund and deal with it that way.
Sounds like a very complicated process that nobody's thought out.
Actually, there has been discussion on it in our consolidation meetings. We've had discussions about it. It's not.
Are there minutes for those meetings that I can see?
I'm sure there is. I don't know who has them. Who maintains that?
Jackie?
So there are no
yeah,
minutes of these meetings you're talking about?
I beg your pardon, Mr.
So
Bartlett?
these decisions were made not in public?
There's no decisions that have been made. There's discussions about the possibilities of what will happen in certain if there certain
And
things
there's
happen.
minutes of the meetings that I go to.
Yes,
All right, that's all I need.
Jackie, what's Jackie's last name? White, Jackie White from the Inter Canyon Fire Board.
They're not maintained by the district here. These meeting minutes that you're talking about,
Well, good.
Yeah.
are not maintained here. You
No,
can't ask for them at Elk Creek, you have to ask for them from some other person.
we can get them for you, Mr. Bartlett, but
Okay.
I'm not the one, and Sharon is not the minute taker.
Well, I know, I have to know what to ask for, I mean, unless you're just gonna produce them for me without me having to do a request. So, I mean, I guess I can figure it out.
So you're asking for the minutes,
For
I'm
the
sorry,
minutes
Mike?
of any of these subgroups you're talking about, I'd like to see any of the information, wherever this Triton people got this, we agree with Elk Creek Fire Protection District that we're gonna discontinue this program. I'd like to see that communication and who that was, because you're saying that didn't happen.
No,
Everybody
I
in the
didn't
room
say
is
that,
saying
sir, you misquoted me. I said that I was not a part of any discussions around there, I'm the tenured board member, and no one asked me any of those things. Now, if there was somebody else that was,
But Triton asserts that they
Somebody
talk
else
to
that
the
was-
district, which is you. You represent the district. They assert they talked to the district that said this. So I'd like to know who is representing themselves as the district that they agree with. If it's not you, then who is it?
who was it, I think is a better way to phrase it, who was it that they spoke?
We can
Is it?
find out, Mike.
Yes, I
We'll
would like
find
to
out.
see the communication between Triton and the district.
We will
that
find
talks
out.
about this specific thing.
So if I can,
Go ahead.
if I
That's
may,
cool, that's fine if you.
we're gonna find out
Okay,
who made that statement.
appreciate it.
Okay. We're gonna get the minutes discussing any sort of pension plan, any plans for the pension under the possible consolidation. All of those. Okay?
Appreciate it.
Anything else?
Not for right now. That's all I
Okay.
can think of.
I just wanna make sure that we're getting you the information that you want.
Every time I get information, I come up with more questions.
Understandable.
Good, all right.
I do have a question for you as, do you get any communication, I know you're not getting communication from the Elk Creek Pension Board, I understand that. Do you get any sort of communication from the FPPA?
I get a check and
And that's it?
a 1099.
And no statement of the, okay, that's what I wanna know. So no prospectus or anything, okay. You have to call them to get any sort of information.
You know, supposedly I have a login. I've never tried a login. When
Okay.
I was on the board here, it was easy for me because they
You were
presented
here?
stuff to me. I was treasurer of the board.
Okay. That is a problem to me that they're not getting any, because I've never seen anything come for Kevin, other than that 1099. So I think improving the level of communication there is important, not only from us, but from the FPPA, to make sure they have their pension information.
Well, we also need to update the contact list of
Yeah.
our active retirees, certainly. And it'll take due diligence for sure to ensure that those that have updated contact information are still on
Yeah.
the list. But when I called FPPA regarding Mr. Bartlett's issue, they said that any one of those members can get online and find that information out. And, things have shifted from the time that Mr. Bartlett was on this board.
Yeah.
And I think the information is out there, and we'll just have to educate people on how to access that information. But
Absolutely.
the FPPA would bend over backwards to provide anybody information. That was what was provided to me when Mr. Bartlett said that he was not getting information from
Well, so
FPPA.
a simple email with a link, they press a link is very modern way of communicating. A lot of people communicate around that way. I would expect that sort of communication with any pension plan.
Yeah.
My personal
Exactly. So I would
representative
contact
emails
them.
me every freaking week about some kind of thing. Never had anything from FPPA. And I'm not sure if they just handle the funding. I don't think that they handle the actual legality of the state pension plan.
I
I don't think they
sure
make the
that's
rules, and I don't.
true. I believe that the FPPA has that familiarity. And again, I would recommend that through your own, or in your own time, that you reach out to, and any active board member to ensure that their account is what it needs to be in terms of contact information, beneficiaries, and the like. So the FPPA, there's a 1-8, or not a 1-800 number, but there's a local number that you can call, which I did when you raised the question 2 meetings ago, to ensure that that things were appropriate for you. And they were more than willing to address any concerns that anybody that is receiving a pension has. And that would, the information being provided from them, I would have to guess would need, they perhaps are unaware that they're not getting the information out that they need.
Well, most
I
of
don't
us
know.
retirees are old people, as you might know. And so a lot of them are older than me. And a lot of these guys don't feel represented at all. Nobody I talk to today feels like they have any representation. And every single one of them said, you know what, if you run for the pension board, I will support you. So I think these people need some kind of representation because they've been forgotten. I mean, there a few of the pictures of these people are on the walls, but other than that, you know, we used to have a appreciation day for the people that came before us. When I started, for sure, we celebrated the people that came before us because they are what created what's here now. The volunteers are the ones that said, hey, can we hire a few people to help us out? So we're the ones that actually created paid positions at this fire district because felt like we were being overworked.
Well, it's a
And I thought it
great
was
bit
a
of
great
history.
idea at the time, and I think, you know, we morphed into a more paid department than we are volunteer, obviously.
Duly noted, and out of respect for time, Ms. Bartlett, what we'll do is, so we're gonna update the contact information, we're gonna get the minutes that we have for the consolidation and make sure that those are available. And we're going to look at a possibility of any type of stipend that might be available for the pension. Did I miss any of
Yeah,
those?
I need a timeline for this election that we're having. Because I don't know, it was supposed to be in April, and the April before that, and the April before that, and the April before that. You put it off until next April?
No,
Or are we actually?
We're gonna-
It must have been out.
you're gonna have a new representative as of August, so starting today, we will get out as much information for nominees to submit, to be voted on in August. And that will be,
So we'll put my name on the list.
okay,
Submitting my name to be a nominee.
okay? And then from there, we will go back onto the schedule, so in January, we will request nominees for April. And it will cycle,
So we're gonna do it this year and next year?
yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
As I mentioned earlier, we're gonna get back on track.
Well, no, I think that's good. I mean, it used to be, all the people used to be in a room at the same time. So we didn't have this issue of nobody being here.
Yeah, there was also, you know, and I appreciate your historic perspective and the things that you did in the past to make Elk Creek a great fire department, Ms. Bartlett. Thank you very much. All right, any other business to be brought before the board? All right, hearing none, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Motion by Director Woods, seconded by Mr. Binney. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? All right. Adjournment at 6:39. Right, so that takes us to our Elk Creek Fire Protection District Board of Directors regular meeting agenda. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Paul, as always. So I'll call the meeting to order at 6:40. We have address the Pledge of Allegiance, roll call of members. We do have everyone present. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Additions or deletions to the agenda? Nothing? Additions or deletions? All right, we will accept the agenda as presented. All right, please review the June 2023 regular meeting minutes. We had a substitute minute taker that day. All right, any additions or deletions to the, or corrections to the regular meeting minutes from June 2023? Second time. Additions or deletions or corrections? Third time. Additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to approve the June 2023 regular, or Elk Creek Fire Protection District Board of Directors regular meeting.
So moved.
Director Woods makes a motion. Second.
Second.
Second by Director Payne. All in favor?
Aye. Right.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. So, nobody's against, but we do have one abstention. That motion carries. Right, that leads us to item number 6, financial matters.
Yeah.
Treasurer Woods. Oh, did you want the clicker?
No,
Okay.
it's okay. I think the chief can take directions. Maybe.
I'll do my best.
I don't know. All right, next slide, because this is just the introductory. Okay, first slide is overview of year-to-date total revenue. As you can see, we are at $3,030,267 against a forecast of $2,828,661. So we are tracking revenue appropriately, and it looks pretty much like we'll end the year with realizing most of the forecast, if not all. Contributors to the revenue, property taxes contributed $2.5 million. Ownership taxes are $134K, which is significantly over forecast. Ambulance transports were $182,000, and interest income of $136,000. Those are all things that contributed to the revenue, year-to-date revenue. Next slide. Year-to-date expenses. Total budget for expenses this year was $5,384,10. Currently in June, we are at $2,618,516 against, a budget of $2,618,516, with actual expenses coming in at $2,119,207. So we are under budget for expenses. Significant contributors were basically, something to note is that includes the audit fees of $14,000, which were under budget. Administration, training, prevention, SURF, capital and maintenance departments came in under respective budgets.
Director Woods, please forgive me. Would you mind just reorienting yourself so that you would speak towards the crowd? I'm afraid that they're not going to be able to hear everything you say.
Okay, absolutely. So budgeted purchases of new hoses for the fire department accounted for an uptick in June. Budgeted purchases for supplies of medical equipment for the ambulances was an uptick in June also. But overall expenses are tracking under budget. Next slide. This is the income for 2023 against the income for 2022. Overall budgeted income for 2023 is $7,271. So this is basically to show you that income is tracking very similar to 2022. And Director Newby, you're frowning, so is there a question you have?
Just trying to see the numbers,
Okay.
a little small.
You want to move forward?
No,
Okay.
None of us can see them. Okay, well.
On the line graphs, yeah.
I
Perhaps
can
some
just read
copies
them
could
to you
be
and you
made
can
on
just
paper.
listen. Pardon me?
perhaps some copies could be made on paper so that everybody can handle it and see what the numbers are. Rather than this small screen and tiny numbers.
We can certainly do that.
Well,
That's
Chief,
a
if she
communication.
gets this PowerPoint presentation to one of your staff, do you think they could knock out some copies that we provided people?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's good
Thank you.
communication. Mhm, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Next slide. We'll get
Hold
the-
on, Sharon, let him get that printed, sent out.
Okay.
Yeah, you can carry on, are we on the right slide? I'm working on that right now.
Do you want, I can wait. I mean,
No, go ahead.
problem waiting. Okay, we'll get copies to people. Property tax revenue is our largest revenue number. It's about 67% of overall revenue. Currently, property tax revenue is trending slightly over forecast. The property tax revenue forecast for 2022 was $3,699,153. So our property tax revenue forecast for 2023 is basically flat. So we are not getting additional funding from the county. Year-to-date property tax revenue currently is $2,493,156 versus a forecast of $2,434,114. So we're tracking pretty much along what was forecasted year-to-date. Next slide. This is just a slide. I want to show people what it looks like to forecast property tax. We have a large jump in March because that's when most people pay their property taxes, and we have another jump in July. So what you're seeing is just the monthly ups and downs of the forecast. It's just kind of a fun slide. Next slide. There are three slides on reporting labor. We bill a certain amount of labor every month to Inter Canyon. So these numbers for labor, which is again our largest expense, are adjusted for the amounts that are billed to Inter Canyon. For Inter Canyon, we bill fuel service at 100%, maintenance at 50%, and prevention at 50%. So these numbers are net of the numbers that we bill to Inter Canyon. So we're still continuing a positive variance for labor, adjusted labor, 1,207,354 versus the year-to-date forecast of 1,342,001. So we're on track at 50% of the year because June is 50% of the year. Next slide. This slide is again adjusted labor, but it is labor net of SURF. SURF are labor expenses, part of what we bill the state of Colorado for doing out-of-district work on wildland fires. So this is net of SURF. You can see that labor net of SURF is tracking slightly over forecast, 1,194,275 versus a forecast of 1,150,333. Next slide. This is SURF wages. SURF wages are dependent on fires that are out of district. So at this point, we haven't seen a great number of fires out of district. That is starting to ramp up. So you will see SURF labor bumping up as the fire season progresses. Right now, SURF is at 13,000 for June, 13,079 versus a forecast of about 197,000. This is a difficult amount to forecast because no one can predict the fires. Wildland fires are erratic. They happen whenever. So forecasting the labor for the wildland fires is difficult. Next slide.
This slide is SERF reimbursement status. We submit expenses to the state of Colorado for when we go out of district. That out of district could be within the state of Colorado, or it could be in another state. For example, 2 fires in June, which are not part of this number yet because they weren't reported and weren't submitted to the state until July. This is a very difficult slide to read, I apologize, but it's just a difficult slide to read. So you'll get a copy of it. Basically what you're looking at is, notes because I want to make sure I read the right numbers. And since you can't see them, I want to make sure I read the right numbers. So at this point, we're looking at total SERF expenses of $20,116 as of what was reported in June. SERF amounts submitted to the state at the point that these reports were done was $22,099. SERF reimbursement due for June 2022 was a really hard number to see, I apologize again, is $25,820. So we're relatively on track in 2023 with what was reported for 2022. Reimbursement paid at this point is a really small number, $5,255. That is the amount of the $22,099 that was billed to the state. That is the amount that we were reimbursed. We are still due $16,844. After this report, there have been 6 additional fires, some in Colorado and some in New Mexico. There's approximately $38,000 that has not been submitted yet. So we have to wait till that's submitted to actually have it in this report. Next slide. Total expenses for the month of June that are in the board packet, $316,640. So at this point, I would like a motion to approve the ledger recorded expenses of $316,640.
Director Woods is asking for a motion.
So moved. Second.
All right.
Thank you. Oh,
Discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. All right, let's see. I'm just going to say this falls under our financial matters, just as an added note that the audit presentation will take place at our August regular meeting. We were not able to get that posted in time for our auditors to be able to provide insight into our most current audit that was just completed. And we will get a copy of that draft audit out here soon. I saw that you were requesting it already, so we'll get that out to all of our directors so we have a chance to look at that. But anticipate as a new item in financial matters that we will have an audit presentation in August. All right.
So will the auditors be making that presentation here in person?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, in person, I don't know if it's in person. Every year they've ever done it, it's always been on Zoom.
Yeah, it's
They're
a
gonna
challenge.
be zooming in.
It's a challenge to get them here in person. We requested that. He was traveling. I don't know if he will or not.
It's
All right.
not
Any other-
unusual this time of year.
What's that?
It's not unusual this time of year.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions related to financial matters? Director Woods, I just want to say I appreciate the in-depthness and the oversight that you put into the fiscal responsibility that's necessary for this board. We wouldn't be where we are without that. And I know that you spend countless hours trying to get this information to presentable for us. So I just want to say thank you for your efforts. Okay, that takes us to a very exciting item, number 7, promotions. So I love this. I love any time that we bring anybody on. I'm very proud of this Fire Protection District as a community and the things that we have done in the past. In the last 75 years, it was addressed amongst our our conversations today about what the volunteers have done for this department and what they'll continue to do regardless of what may happen in the future. This community is driven off of volunteers. Chief, so we can do this with some sort of structure. Would you mind to call up your volunteers individually so that we can put a face to the name?
Perfect. There will be a Mr. Coldfield.
Colt, how about this? Yeah, there's plenty of room. Can we turn this slide on over here, fellas? Yeah, perfect. And then we'll call it family.
Perfect. Mr. Jones. Mr. Shine and Mr. Beckwith.
Gentlemen, and to our esteemed guests today and to the family, I just want to take an opportunity. Some people might disregard what a volunteer is and what they do, but we know that volunteers have lost their lives in effort of protection of Elk Creek fire protection. Ralph his name is out there on that board for all of us to look at. That defines what volunteers put themselves in front of every day in terms of the protection for this community and for our homes, our well-being, those who travel through our fine community, those that bring their business here. And when I think about how impressioned I am by our fine volunteers and by our past volunteers, by those that are out every day assisting our paid firefighters from 4710 to be able to accomplish the emergency scene, or to accomplish and mitigate what is necessary for each emergency scene, I'm honored to stand or to be amongst you. And I know my fellow board members are as well, and I'll speak on their behalf, but I found something that I thought that was important. It's a credo that comes not far from the volunteer aspect, but anybody who puts themselves on the line. So if you'll indulge me, I honorably serve as a guardian to my community, always ready to respond to those who cannot help themselves. I do not advertise the nature of my work or seek recognition for my actions. I voluntarily accept the inherent dangers of my profession, placing the welfare and security of others before my own. That credo to me is righteous in the efforts of what you four gentlemen and your colleagues and the volunteers, all our volunteers and our paid firefighters. But I want to recognize you three gentlemen as we go through this next section. Chief, would you like to add anything to that before we call the families up?
No, it's pretty exciting. We opened this up, and these individuals actually applied. We voted a few into it. And it's pretty exciting for them to step up and lead and take the position as station officers. We haven't had volunteer station officers for a number of years, and I'm pretty excited to get back to that. It's a very important role, and congratulations to you guys for taking that on.
Would you all join me in a round of applause? Your proven efforts will guide and lead those junior volunteers that come on, and maybe some junior paid firefighters that are coming on as well. So it's greatly appreciated. Chief, how do you want to do this? This is exciting.
Yeah.
The old red helmet.
I was going to say, so traditionally, as most people know, black helmets are the working class. Those are what most of the firefighters wear. Once you start moving up into leadership, everybody jokes, the different colors, they're a lot heavier. These are lieutenants, middle management. This is one of the most important jobs in the fire service. And these station officers are, it's like I said, very exciting to get back to that. It's something that kind of went away some years ago, and again, congrats.
Can would the families of these gentlemen please step forward, and what we'll do is we'll pass their new lids onto the family and the family passing on there. How do we want to start? I'll start with.
It looks like fields and farms.
I have, there we go. And just, you just do whatever you think is appropriate.
I'm not sure you want me to do that.
No, it's fine.
Oh, congratulations. I love you.
Yay.
The Jones family.
Congratulations.
Oh, and then Captain Shine's family. I haven't met them yet.
Get him.
This is your name on it.
And last but not least,
Yeah, social media.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, families, and thank you, our fine public. We're going to move to item number 8, Chief Ware's report.
all right. As everybody is aware, the month of June was the wettest month since the early 1900s when Pike National Forest started documenting weather. So fire danger has remained extremely low. We do take fuel moistures, and actually everything has been so saturated it's not even worth taking up until probably the last week or so. It's allowed resources to concentrate on project work, as well as allowed us to send some resources out to assist other agencies within the state. The Pike National Forest even had the opportunity for some prescribed fire operations on the Buffalo Creek Ranger District, where we had a couple people assisting. We were successful on a grant for a new ambulance. The grant will cover about 35% of the cost of a new ambulance that will replace a 2009 unit. The new ambulance hopefully will be ordered this month, and we'll see about the estimated delivery date. There are shortages of nearly everything. The goal is 2024. We will have significant safety upgrades for the patients as well as for the providers. This grant was written and submitted by Lieutenant Hartley, and she also is the lead on the design of the new unit. The wildland module has been recognized as the Type 2 WFM. Is only the second non-federal resource to achieve the certification. It's been a project that Jason Pappenfuss has been working on for the last several years. The process was a very thorough process. It had an evaluation that involved the state of Colorado and a number of people from the U.S. Forest Service, as well as some local individuals from the county, and they passed. Again, that was very exciting, so kudos to Jason Pappenfuss and all those guys. We've also been able to hire 2 firefighter EMTs, which will bring us to full staffing of 4 per shift. We have also brought on an assistant mechanic for Fleet Manager Hojanowski. It is exciting because all 3 hires have been local. We are still having issues recruiting firefighter paramedics, as everybody has. It's a problem that's happening all over the Front Range, and there are a number of speculations as to what the reason is, but even the big departments are not filling up their academies, so obviously we're not going to compete with them. Volunteer staffing, we had 210 hours of volunteer staffing. We're still averaging only 3.5 members per call. 9% of our calls overlapped, and our average response time was 8:30. Down significantly from last month. We only had 80 runs for the last month. Nothing significant, and 1 mutual aid to us as well. Our transports also trending slightly down with 26 transports. It was a big month for training. Very exciting. We had 734 hours of training for the month. We sent 7 Elk Creek firefighters to a 3-day structural fire suppression class in Gunnison, Colorado. We also hosted a TIMS class, a traffic incident management class. It was instructed by CDOT and CSP, and we had students from 3 different agencies in the class. And we had a swiftwater rescue class in conjunction with North Fork with students from 3 agencies attending. Fire prevention, Fire Marshal Parker and Deputy Fire Marshal Rush completed 81 inspections, and the Together Jeffco project has started. I had a little update on it. I participated in one of their comment groups, and Captain Yellen as well as Captain Mandel are also participating. It's just getting going. We don't know what it's going to look like and what it's going to entail. To be determined what it's really going to look like in the end. Our fleet, Medic 434, that's unfortunately the Medic we're replacing. It had to have a new AC compressor installed. Both chippers have had full service completed, including diagnosing some overheating issues. And hopefully we're ordering a new ambulance to replace that 2009 unit. Facilities, Station 2 is the newest place for vandalism. I think the lights have deterred anything. We haven't had anything since we've had the lights here, so we're going to be upgrading some security lights and cameras at Station 2 in an effort to stifle that. There were several ideas about fencing it in and a couple other things, but fencing it in is going to be ludicrously expensive, and I don't know if that's going to be the best option for this year. And that's all I got.
So how much damage?
Just minor things. You can see, we've seen people on the cameras tinkering around. We had a small stand walk away. Asplund down the road has had some significant, they had a chipper stolen. There's, unfortunately, here we had all of our fuel stolen. One of the firefighters' gas tanks were drilled. So we're trying to get away from that at Station 2. About the only thing we can do is lights and cameras right now.
And Jeffco is helping us out?
Yeah, we've asked about it. Unfortunately, Station 2 is right on the edge. So that falls into a Park County kind of weird place. And unfortunately, Park County doesn't have any staffing at night. So the Jeffco deputies do help out when they have the time.
All right. Well, Chief, thank you. Any questions? Chief Ware. All right, that takes us to our...
Director,
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Two questions for the chief. Chief, where do we stand on our strategic plan?
We are working on that right now. What we came out of that meeting was we were going to look at hiring a vendor to help with it. And that is that's a bit problematic. A lot of the consulting firms, just like we've discovered for other things, they're not interested in small agencies. When the A.B. Triton report, a lot of the vendors are more big city oriented, and they're not interested in working for something like us. So what I'm doing right now, the strategic plan, the vehicle replacement narrative for the forward-facing document, that should be done next week. We'll put that out there. Then in that, we'll start building off that.
And what about standards of cover? Is
That's
a parallel track?
Yeah, that's a parallel document with it. That's already in the works right now. We're trying to gather data from population data is one of our challenges because unincorporated Jefferson County doesn't have really sound data. We did get access to something at the county through planning and zoning where we can actually get relatively sound data to build off of.
What about our IGAs? I noticed that our IGAs are for fire marshal is everything from $44.50 an hour all the way up to $95 an hour. So is that in work? Is to regular, right, to update those?
That was supposed to be at this board meeting, but we did not. I was not able to get everything put in place before the last Thursday.
So those are
what's going to happen is, so the most recent one, it says up to $95 an hour. That will cover overtime, and that should, unfortunately, most of those IGAs were in place before I was in my position, and they didn't keep up. They were the exact rate, so every time there was a pay raise or overtime, they had to be changed, which was an extremely inefficient, laborious process, because if there's a cost of living adjustment every year, then you have to redo the IGA, which was laborious for us as well as the receiving agency. So the goal is to move to that most recent one where it was up to $95 an hour, which will cover everything. Obviously, we're not charging that, but that will cover everything, hopefully, for quite some time.
And so this is in the context of the new vehicle, right? So how do we capture the cost for a vehicle for the fire marshal or the deputy fire marshal? How do we, so is that built into an hourly rate?
We
Or
try.
do we also do a mileage? Do
We charge
a
travel.
mileage?
We charge travel time.
Well, travel time, but what does that, so my question is, how do we capture, so we have a fire marshal, deputy fire marshal out on doing out of district work,
Correct.
right? And the distances they travel
Yeah.
are, you know, maybe 100 miles, maybe 30 miles, or maybe 5 miles. So how do we capture that variability? So if we're putting a vehicle out there, how do we capture that, those expenses back?
Well,
For gas, insurance, all that.
historically, what we do is on the burden rate, we have an inclusion in there. We haven't charged mileage in the past. Usually on the burden rate, I have to look back and see what it was. There was a bit for the vehicle that was added on to the hourly rate.
And is that gonna be adjustable also? Because I mean, insurance rates are going up and so forth and so on.
Yeah, and
I mean, to me, I look at that $44.50 an hour rate and I say, man, that's really inexpensive. We're really giving our services away here. So how do we protect ourselves against
I agree.
loss?
I agree 100%. That's why the ones that I put in have been up to the $95. So we're going to move towards that. So the goal is probably hopefully at the next board meeting, we'll have fresh IGAs. We're going to have up to that amount. So we're going to have the ability to capture that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some of the ones that were put in the beginning didn't, I don't feel captured the true cost of the service.
Right. And then also we were planning on a special meeting to work on ideas for large-scale development and impacts on the district.
Yes.
Where are we at with that?
I think that's probably just trying to schedule. I've actually packaged up quite a bit of stuff, a lot of information that will be up to you guys to figure out kind of where you want to go with it. I think the big challenge is going to be trying to get everybody to meet at the same time. But I think that's something I was going to bring that up to President Pixie, and that we should probably look at trying to do that.
So we would be ready to go on that pretty quickly?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
All right, perfect. Right, that takes us to public comment number 1. Would somebody be so kind as Captain Shine, would you grab, all right.
Got it.
And you can just hand it to me. Thank you. All right, we have, just to remind everybody that this new process is in line with current standards in terms of public comment, allowing each person to speak for 3 minutes. We can get 10 people in the first public comment period, and then we'll have a second comment period just before adjournment. First gentleman is Mr. Paul Olson.
Okay. Me again.
Hey, how are you?
All right. So I kind of like to go on from what I commented on last month. And in looking at the paperwork and looking at what you posted, I don't see a real clear set of criteria for your site selection for your stations. A lot of the stations are existing have been around for a long time. A lot of them have been there before US 285 was 4 lanes. And I see again station number 4, a lot of the stuff is on the other side of the freeway, and getting from 4 to the other side of the freeway is kind of an odd route. I look at, if you combine, I look at Inter Canyon number 2, and that's it's an at-grade intersection, so it's not really safe for them coming out of there. And I'd like to see, if you're going to spend a lot of money on upgrading stations, look at the location and give us a clear set of criteria and how you would decide what is the best location to spend that money. You know, in terms of traffic, in terms of growth, in terms of, you know, where you're going to go, where the calls have been, who needs to be served, and safety for the firefighters that have to get onto the highways to do that work. And a clear set of criteria before you start going down to,
You know, I see pictures, we're gonna fix this one, or we're gonna put this here and put that there, but I don't see a clear set of criteria why you made that choice. And I think you owe it to the public to tell us exactly what those criteria are. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Duly noted. All right, and Dr. Whitehead.
I've written information here. Great.
You just pass it on, and we'll just pass it around. All right. Fire away.
That's the first time I've been here since the new rules, and I'm Neil Whitehead III, 31634 Black Widow Way, Conifer, and a resident of Oak Creek Fire Protection District since 1998. And as they say from lingo on the various fire districts channels, that address has a history. In the fall of 2013, I was a member of the Friends of Elk Creek, and we helped pass a 2.5 mill levy increase. In the fall of 2019, I led the Friends of Elk Creek, and we have passed another mill levy increase. And the total of the turnout was 66% yes and 33% no. And Director Baker, Melissa, my friend, 10 years ago, we worked together to get a mill levy increase passed after 2 previous voter rejections, and that mill levy terminates or is terminated as it was for 10 years. And from the draft, the tax increase ballot language that I've seen, it appears that the 2.5 mills is to be coupled with a 3.5 mill increase for a total of 6 mills asked. And if the tax increase measure fails for Elk Creek Fire, Elk Creek will be severely wounded. Nothing will happen to North Fork or Inter Canyon. And the preliminary consolidation agreement appears to allow multiple bites at the apple of consolidation. A much less reckless course would be to make a separate ballot question to make permanent the 2.5 mill levy. I feel very sure that the voters of Elk Creek Fire would never, ever vote to defund fire and EMS protection. Now the question, Director Baker, will you attempt in the meeting tonight to cause an explanation as to why the 2.5 mill increment was lumped and the reasoning behind that decision? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehead. I think we'll move forward with Kelly Tannenbaum.
Okay, my concern is about the consolidation of the districts. What I am reading here as the proposed ballot language is completely contradictory. It's asking us to waive state legislation that is in place that takes into consideration the ratio. They have formulas for how population and residency affect the area. So you're asking us to waive all of these rights, and I'd like to know why. What's the meaning behind that? The section, forgive me, what is this? I forgot where it was. The Amendment 10, Section 24, I believe, cites other laws within that section. Does that mean that we waive those laws as well, which, as I read in the state legislation, that it also, that amendment and the section you're asking us to waive dictates emergency funds? Does that mean we waive emergency funds from the state as well? Are we completely ceding from the state in that section. Let's see, I find the lack of representation appalling. From what I've seen in this meeting, this is my first meeting, and I will definitely attend more and call for more activity from the community. There is an overall awareness and lack of adequate communication that I have seen. I want to know why. Why are things not being communicated with the community more? Your transparency, why isn't there more transparency? If you're asking us to waive state legislation and the Tabor Act, which has the formulas, which talks about the population, on a state highway, you're asking Conifer residents to take responsibility to pay on these mill levies for out-of-state travelers and in-state travelers that are not familiar with mountain driving, and you expect us to take care of them. That's not how a democracy works. I do see a lack of democracy here as well, particularly in this public comment
30 seconds.
that you've published. It's contradictive, it's poorly written, it calls for, it's based upon these documents and violations of the laws. I think there needs to be a call for resignation of your position with, based on the document that you have your name signed to. There's so much more about this, too many contingencies and too many ands in this proposal and ballot language. It needs to be rewritten, and it needs to be rewritten with clear, unweaponized words and so infinite mounds of interpretation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Damelbaum. And that takes us to a Ms. Jody W.
Didn't have anything covered, but I tried. I just, I understand that we now have a type 2 team, which people are very excited about. I think it's very important for you to communicate to the public the cost benefit. I'd love to know what it costs to get that certification because it is very rare. And I'd like to know what the benefit is to the taxpayers of making that expense specifically.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe some of those questions are going to be answered in our next, as we move forward. The next item of business is old business, and it's a draft ballot and election resolution language. This was provided to all the board members, even if they had it a week ago for their evaluation, and let's open up the discussion. We do have our counsel, Mr. John Camille. He's ready to answer any questions that would, so far away. Anybody have any questions related to this? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right away.
So John, why are the numbers, the spaces here for the dollars, why are they blank? That would be one question. Why is the mill levy also blank? So if you just start off with those two, I have more, but,
Yeah.
but
So
start with those two.
absolutely. So these were, based on our conversations, this was only intended as kind of getting the draft language in front of the board. And then there's also kind of a timing issue component to it with regard to the assessor and all the work that's being done, particularly given the record number of appeals that went on this year and the potential impact of Senate Bill 303. So there hasn't been a draft assessment value provided yet. So ultimately what we wanted to provide was just at least the draft language, what it would generally look like and cover, but we didn't have the data yet to get in those specific numbers and provide a clear estimate. The goal would be at the next meeting that those numbers, of course, would be finalized in there, and we're going to try to get them, as soon as possible. But ultimately, it was really the assessor data that's the issue there, and we didn't want to put a number in right now, which would be kind of more of a wild guess, trying to get some data from the county before we actually put a number to that. The mills, the way it was presented, initially was to get it out, to all 3 districts for consideration, and the mills will be different. The mill and dollar amount will be different for each district. So I didn't do the work like with each district to put those in. I just provided, this is kind of the legal language of what the overall ballot, measure would look like. And then it would be, each district would work to put those numbers in.
So for us, there's no question, or is there a question as to what mill levy the ballot is going to ask for? We're going to ask for 16 mills, are we not?
So
We're going to ask for 14 mills. What are we asking the voters to do?
Yeah, my understanding is that the intent is still to get each district to pass an increase that will allow the consolidated district to impose a mill up to 16 mills. So
But that's up to.
Mhm.
But
Well, so
what is the actual mill levy that we're asking the voters to pay?
that ultimately would be up to the districts in certifying the mill levy. The reason we say up to is that any mill levy approval is as a maximum authority. So the board could always choose to certify a lower mill levy. They just can't go in excess. So the intent is that the ballot measure language will be consistent in that each district will be requesting enough mills to get each district on that even playing field to up to 16 mills. But then the determination on actually certifying would be part of the budget discussion following the election, ultimately.
Okay, so that was a very lawyerly answer, and it was, I'm sure you would have gotten an A in law school for that answer. But we're not in law school. We're out in the community educating the public. We're talking to the public. With that in mind, what mill levy are we asking the public to pay? How many dollars are we asking the voters to pull out of their pockets? Are we asking them 14 mills, 12 and a half mills, 16 mills? What is the millage that we're asking?
So the ballot measure would be different. That won't say 16. That's why I was trying to make the distinction. The 16 would ultimately be what's certified to the county if the ballot measures are approved.
So it would be 16. The ballot would have a number.
It will have a number, but it would be...
But it would, for this district, I'm not talking about the other
Right.
two districts. I don't care about the other two districts. I care only about this district.
Right.
What are we asking the voters, the taxpayers, the people who live here, what are we asking them to pay? Are we asking them to pay 16 mills? Do you know, Director Pixley?
And so now we're asking.
No, in fact, we're working on it right now.
Do we know? Do we have an idea?
So
Anybody?
I believe the ballot measure is going to be 6 in the ballot measure.
5.97.
There you go. So it's just getting voter approval to allow the district to go up to the...
add another 6 mills.
And it's unique because Elk Creek has
And
the
what is-
sunsetting.
What is that number?
Director Newby.
5.97.
Finish your point.
Sorry.
I'm just talking, my point is to get a number.
Yeah, I know, but he interrupted. He was finishing his statement.
You interrupted him.
No, so the intent is, that's why I'm trying to draw the distinction of, it's not, the ballot measure is not going to be the 16 mills. The ballot measure is just asking for the increase necessary to get to 16. So that's why it's going to be different for each district.
Okay.
Because of the sunsetting mill levy, the timing of the sunset in Elk Creek, that's where the number's going to look a lot larger. It's going to be close to 5.97-ish in the ballot measure language. That'll be the mill levy number because that's what will allow the district to get up to 16 based on the existing approved mill levies.
So then, based on the draft assessment, then a number will be filled in this line.
Yes. Based on what 5.97 mills will provide a dollar figure against the assessed value once we get that estimate, which I've been told should be coming out in the next few weeks, but it seems like that's the answer every time you talk to the assessor these days is the next few weeks. But yes, that will be a specific dollar figure tied to the 5.97 mils for Elk Creek. And that's what that ballot measure will state.
Right. But it will still be, it'll still be an estimate at that point.
Yes.
Everything will still be an estimate.
Yeah.
So we have, in this draft ballot language, we have two measures.
Mm-hmm.
One is a measure for consolidation, one is a measure for a new mill levy.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain how each one works and how they both work together? Do they stand together? Do they fall together? You know, how does that all work in terms of when the voters go to the polls in November? If A happens, or if B happens, or if C happens, can you go through it for us?
Yep, absolutely. So the intent is that they are contingent questions. So they are inherently linked both in the pre-consolidation IGA and the way that the ballot measures are drafted. The consolidation is contingent upon approval of the mill levy increase. So if both are approved, then the consolidation goes forward. If either one is not approved, then the consolidation does not go forward.
Okay. That's clear enough. And the language here basically will be reviewed also. I mean, the process going forward. This is proposed ballot language. We will come back next month, finalize this, pass a resolution
Yes.
that will cause the ballots, the two ballot measures, only two, right?
Yes.
To be printed, approved by the state. Blue books will, can you take us through the remainder of the process after we get past the next meeting? What happens at the state level?
So as far as so the intent is to take part in the coordinated election for November. So that's the target. So that is the statewide election that's coordinated by the county clerk and recorders. So that is all set by statute. So the resolution at the district level approving the ballot measures is essentially then what allows the staff to move forward with certifying those two ballot measures to the counties to be included in the coordinated election. So that deadline is not until September 8th. So August, we have a little bit of time. The August meeting, we'll get it in front of the county. What they then are charged with actually developing the full ballot. There's a way that they have to assess what other special districts, measures are going to be on the ballot, and they'll then give you back the certified language with your number letter, official designation. That will kind of set the ballot itself. Then we have, I think it's about 2 weeks or so. I think this year it's, I want to say September 22nd is the Tabor comment deadline. So the next step is the Tabor notices, which is the blue book. That's what commonly is referred to as a blue book. So comments can be provided on those ballot measures. That happens locally. We put together the Tabor notices locally, and then you certify those to the county. Again, because as the coordinated election, the county is the one that actually will print all of the ballot or the blue books and send them out. So as opposed to kind of the May elections that the district is, solely running the election locally, we're basically providing the information and certifying it to the county, and they handle all of the printing, mailing, and then also, of course, all of the ballots is, handled by the county as well.
But can you explain how the state has an oversight role? I mean, the county they are the workers who actually, get the ballots printed and all that stuff. But the state also has an oversight role
So
as well.
The Secretary of State's office is the state level agency that oversees, the election process. So the county has statutory reporting requirements and compliance they have to work through with the state as far as the security of the elections, the technology used. So that is all handled through the county with their relationship with the Secretary of State's office. So the district won't really have any
So that's nothing that we get involved with at all?
Yeah. But they do have specific regulations that the Secretary of State's office put out that regulate all the way down to things like the random testing for voting machines, things like that, as far as the compliance goes. But yeah, the district isn't charged with any of that. As far as the ballot language, like the ballot measures go, that does not get elevated to the state in any kind of review form. Basically, the way that, and you'll see this because we're kind of straddling the timeline here, but the counties will start pushing out IGAs for any district that's interested in taking part in the coordinated election. You actually sign an IGA with the county to coordinate the election. And so ultimately what that kind of looks like is the county says, we're coordinating the election component, but we rely on you, the local district, for all of the substantive, the ballot measure language, the taper notice language and information, to be provided. So they don't even not even like at the county level. The county attorney, for example, is not going to do any kind of additional review on that. They rely entirely on the information, that we're providing them. So there's not that level of oversight, just to make that clarification.
But there will be a county DEO, and that will be a county person?
Yes.
Or a person that the county hires, or how does that work?
Typically, the default is the county clerk and recorder is kind of the default,
Will
and
be
then
the DEO?
yeah, and
Okay.
and then I imagine in Jefferson County there's probably a number of, they have deputy DEOs, and then also I think they call them either election specialists or election coordinators. So they have kind of a pretty big staff that handles that. But yeah, the clerk and recorder's office at the county level, similar to kind of the Secretary of State, the clerk and recorder is the position at the county level that oversees the election process.
That's all I have.
So, Mr. Camille, I had one question. During the consolidation committee meetings, we had talked about the possibility on that second, on the tax increase measure where it says if the consolidation measure is also approved by voters. And we had a conversation about allowing that to continue without that question not to be relative to the consolidation, just so that it could answer the sunset issue that we have. And I'm curious if you can help us understand why that language doesn't articulate that, so that we can, as at least Elk Creek, address one of the concerns that we have related to the sunset.
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it would be the potential to separate the sunsetting the levy portion, so that would be a separate issue. That wouldn't be tied to the consolidation. So that you could have approval of the continuation of the sunsetting mill levy that could be independent of the consolidation measure?
Yes, so would we, if we remove that language, if the consolidation measure is also approved by voters, not only would Elk Creek, but also North Fork and Inter Canyon would benefit from the increase in the mill. So and in Elk Creek specifically, it would answer our question to the sunset that is in our face. And if we were able to change that language, would we be able to address that sunset issue that we have and then not have to go back to the voters? Essentially what's going to happen is, I believe, and I might be wrong, but I don't want to get voter fatigue. To ensure that we maintain this fire department and this fire protection district, that is, regardless of what happens with the consolidation, I want to try to get us set up so that we can continue without, the chief and I were talking, Chief, what did we say, maybe $750,000 a year that we would lose?
Right around there before the new assessments. It's 743 and change.
And so you can see my concern is, yeah, we have monies available that will help us if times get lean, but we don't want to draw on our reserves if we don't have to. And if the contingent of our community was so willing to allow for us to have that increase, would that, so two questions. can we get the language changed, and if not, or to address the sunset, and if not, what's the rationale behind it? Do you remember our
Yeah,
conversation? Okay.
So, I think it would be a potential issue with the way that the IGA was drafted as far as the, conditions. I think.
IGA, please.
Intergovernmental agreement.
Thank you.
So there's a pre-consolidation intergovernmental agreement between the three districts that kind of sets up the process
Okay.
for the consolidation. So that was approved a few months ago.
A few months.
And where is that information posted for the public?
It's on the website.
It's probably
It's on the website.
Yeah.
On the website.
It's buried there somewhere, but.
So ultimately, the way that the consolidation process has been discussed is that there is that contingency that, each district gets, up to the 16 mills. So the issue is, I think ultimately to still comply with that language, but allow Elk Creek potentially the benefit of extending the sunsetting mill levy if the consolidation fails, you'd have to have a third question.
Separate question.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We talked about that.
As a side, really quick, ma'am, it's Elk Creek FPD.colorado.gov,
Okay.
transparency, IGAs.
It's on the consolidation page.
Absolutely.
That would be really helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I would be happy to. See me afterwards and I'll get your email or
Well, but I
text.
need to everybody.
I can add it to the minutes.
That's good.
Okay.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Okay.
But I
Well,
will give you my
they're
email
buried
so you
in
can
the
send
same
it.
place, so It's
They're
the
not-
same 5 clicks in to find anything like that.
It's right from the homepage.
It is
5
right
clicks
from
in,
the homepage.
yes.
Transparency is on the homepage. If you click on transparency and you look down, intergovernmental agreements are there.
Okay,
So it's on the
we-
drop down from
We can add a
transparency.
front page.
We have it addressed. So, any other questions related to the draft language and the election resolution? Any other questions for Mr. Camille? Any other questions? All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice to have your insight in how this all is going down. Okay. Item number 11, old business. Chief, would you like to address the fire marshal vehicle purchase?
Yes, we've gone back to having a permanent full-time deputy fire marshal, and with that, she is also a fire investigator, and having a dedicated vehicle. In the past, when you had a full-time fire marshal, the fire marshal always had a dedicated vehicle, because this individual is also a firefighter and EMT, and so they're a responder. By having a dedicated vehicle to this position, this individual will be able to respond all the time, as well as for fire investigations. Fire investigations has there are a number of tools and whatnot, and it's not efficient for her to have to load up her bits and pieces, to respond to fire investigations, close calls. This was something, it was a budgeted expense, we planned on doing it. So it's not out of reserves or anything like that, it's a capital expenditure. I would like to have the board spend up to $50,000 to do that. This will be in keeping with what we've been doing with getting the mid-sized vehicles and the smaller vehicles. They've been significantly more cost effective. Right now, the Ford Ranger we picked up, I think it was last year, it's getting about 27 miles to the gallon versus the 10 of the 3/4 ton trucks. And really what we've kind of tried to do is, if there's no reason for somebody to be driving around a 3/4 ton truck, why it doesn't make sense up here. The big monster trucks that historically we've always had just don't make sense on a lot of our roads, a lot of our driveways, and a lot of the places that our fire marshal has to go.
All right, so the chief is asking for a motion for the board to approve expenditures up to $50,000 for a fire marshal vehicle purchase.
Should make a motion to purchase a fire marshal vehicle and spend up to $50,000.
Recording in progress.
Okay, do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Second. We have a motion by Director Wood, seconded by Director Baker. discussion on the motion. I know that there has been some discussion.
Yes.
Some thoughts? Yes, sir.
I do. Anybody else?
No, go ahead, Director.
Yeah. So, just a few questions, Chief. And we talked about this on email, but it's obvious that you would be requesting it if there was a suitable vehicle around for this purpose. But have you thought about a different approach, like a lease purchase or a used vehicle?
This will be a used vehicle, I'm sure.
Sharing from other of our districts? Are there other, so my impression was that this would be a brand new vehicle.
No, what this will be is Fleet Manager Mojanowski shops about, and the last, let's see, we got, one of the escapes we got last year was a return lease purchase. After we traded in 2 broken down vehicles, we ended up paying $12,000 for it. Fleet Manager Mojanowski is very good at, so he'll shop for we'll probably end up with a used vehicle, last couple of years, low mile, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So yeah, it will be.
So this will not be brand new?
I doubt it, only because brand new cars are very hard to come by and they have become very expensive.
So this will be an SUV type
or
a pickup truck?
It'll probably be a Ford Ranger. The first one we got was very successful. It's working out very well. So that's kind of the plan. The reason for the pickup is bunker gear.
Yeah, you can secure everything and so forth.
Well, you need to separate it from the passenger
Right,
compartment.
exactly. Right.
Bunker gear is covered in known carcinogens, and just lately with the PFAS and the forever chemicals, there's 3M just admitted that bunker gear is causing cancer and extremely toxic, and just settled for.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is we'll probably pick up at the top on it, so you can separate all of that equipment from
with lock boxes and so forth.
Probably a topper.
Yeah. So, again, my other question is, again, how do we capture the cost of this new vehicle, so that we're not, we're not cheating ourselves in terms of, because insurance is going to be expensive, maintenance is costs need to be factored in and so forth. So how do we build into these IGAs a capture for the cost of this vehicle? How are we going to do that?
Well, currently we've had a dollar amount that we add onto the burden rate, which we end up using that for the maintenance of the vehicles. If there's a better idea, I would love to, whatever we're going to hear with mileage or, yeah, of course.
Between the IGAs in the other districts I work for, we have a equipment rate.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep it separated based off of all the equipment, and we bill out a separate equipment rate. We actually base that off of FEMA's equipment rate.
Yeah.
Which I think might solve the question, because it separates out your hourly employee and time costs.
Right.
And attaches, and you can manage that through an equipment log or an hour meter, or however it works for you guys to manage that. For us, we assign it to an individual, so whatever that individual's hours billed in a specific district on a specific project gets a matching billing for the equipment, and it's kept separate so you can see where you're recovering your employee costs and where you're recovering your equipment costs.
And that would be my thought would be the hourly rate. Everything is at an hour meter. We use Hobbs meter, or I guess not a Hobbs, but the hourly meter for the equipment, and have that in the IGAs. That was one of the things when we were going to update all the IGAs that we're going to.
And then build a rate around the vehicle cost with insurance and maintenance and everything built in.
The rate with
point of information, does the FEMA program, does it allow for that?
Yes, it covers, the FEMA rate is actually we actually scale down from the FEMA rate because we feel it's not necessarily fair in certain situations. But it does have accountancy for, and it goes up based off of this IRS standard mileage rate. it includes standard, cost of insurance,
Right.
nationwide cost of insurance, and repair rate on that particular vehicle. And it covers everything from commuter vehicles for staffing all the way up through large equipment. So it's a good tool and resource.
So if we could stipulate that, I'm not, is the board willing to stipulate that, Chief? Are you willing to stipulate that we
For sure, that's a refined model, definitely.
build in a, because my concern is that $55,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot, in my view. So I want to make sure that we're capturing all of the costs, and, you know, we pay our fire marshal, and we have a vehicle that is very serviceable, no doubt about that. But that when we go out of district, that we are really capturing those costs.
Yeah, and along with the FEMA rate, the other rate that we usually use is the SURF rate, the state of Colorado. So the state of Colorado, we use those rates for nearly everything. And they're built off, I think they're built out of the SURF, the FEMA rates as well. We already have the rate scheduled, so that would be, you know, I think I've sent that out to you guys several times. We could easily look at that, see what that would be, and incorporate that into the IGA.
I think that's reasonable. And I think it addresses your concerns about cost recovery. And that way the vehicle, whether or not it's Fire Marshal Rush driving the vehicle or something changes, we're still securing the cost of the vehicle.
Exactly.
If Jake wants to hop in and take a spin.
Okay, back to the question, if I may. We have a motion made to spend up to $50,000 for the purchase of the fire marshal vehicle. Any other discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion.
I just want to add that these amounts are budgeted. There's capital expenditures in our budget, and it includes this vehicle.
How much did we budget?
We budgeted up to $50,000
Up to
to
50.
spend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why he's asking for $50,000.
Okay, any other discussion? Last time. All right, call the question for the Elk Creek Fire Protection Board of Directors to approve up to $50,000 for the purchase of fire marshal vehicle. All in favor?
So moved. Or sorry, yes.
Aye.
Aye.
And that leads us to, that motion passes. All right, we'll move into the next item, number 2, ambulance purchase.
All right, this is another budgeted expense. I talked about it in the budget narrative. We're replacing a 2009 ambulance, and it's in desperate need of replacement. It was involved in an accident, and I believe 2015, it was a fairly significant accident, causing about $36,000 worth of damage. Unfortunately, the threshold for a new purchase was so much that insurance wouldn't total it. This thing has been plagued with, we rotate tires on it constantly, electronic issues. It was a significant accident, and it has not been great. So we had applied for a grant this year through RETAC, which is supposed to be a 50-50 grant. Unfortunately, the grants haven't caught up with the prices of equipment right now. Right now, believe it or not, an ambulance is running right around between $275,000 and $300,000 for an ambulance. This grant, they're working on the number right now. The grant's going to be right around $125,000, which will be the final payout when we reconcile it. So I would like to ask the board to spend up to, I'm going to say $250,000, just because I don't know where that grant is going to land. We budgeted $300,000 for the ambulance because, yet again, we have to buy the ambulance. There is no question that we have to have a third ambulance. And we will come in underneath that $250,000 with that grant reimbursement. But I'd like to have that as some wiggle room. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So we apply for the grant after we purchase the ambulance?
No, we received the grant.
We received the grant.
We received the award letter several days ago, which is why it's coming up now. Yeah.
I thought we had, but when
No,
you were talking, it sounded like we had
No, and I apologize. And so the grant is a reimbursable grant, so we have to, we'll have to outlay the money up front. And then once we make the expenditure, once everything's delivered, we'll apply for reimbursement and they'll reimburse it. It's the same way we bought the last, I believe, 5 ambulances or 4 ambulances. But I wanted to wait to see where we got this grant before we pull the trigger on it.
What is the name of the grant?
Through RETAC,
RETAC?
yeah. And I can get you all
It's okay.
the stuff with it.
So, and we have been awarded the grant.
Yes, yeah, we were awarded the grant. I got an email, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, maybe somewhere around there.
All right, the chief's asking the board to push a motion forward to spend up to $250,000 for an ambulance purchase. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? We've had a good deal of information provided.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I have more discussion. So originally you were asking for 300,000. That's a
Correct.
lot of money.
It is.
And this would be a new vehicle.
This is a brand new vehicle, yes.
So can you take us through the process? So we would design it.
It's already been designed.
We have a design already.
Yes.
Okay.
That was something, because we had to purchase an ambulance, so our EMS coordinator has been working on this throughout the year. We bought another ambulance in 2020, and this design is building off that one, refining that one.
And you had a committee for that with staff, if I remember correctly.
We had,
Firefighter committee.
yeah, we had a firefighter committee with some volunteer staff, some career staff, some people from Inter Canyon.
So this meets their wish list.
Yeah, the big thing is the patient compartment and all the changes, the safety measures that you can have in there versus what we had before, getting rid of the traditional bench seats and having the captain's chairs, more modern seat belts, so firefighter, or for EMTs and care providers can actually provide care for the patients while still remaining seat belted. So it'll be a lot like the one we got in 2020, only refining that from the things we learned on that one. In little historical knowledge, we did try and save some money. It was my less than stellar project. We tried to re-chassis once, which is an option. Re-chassing did not work out well. Our boxes are just too old. They suffer corrosion issues from mag chloride and everything else. I think we re-chassied, I want to say in 2018, which that takes the existing box off a worn out chassis and puts it on a new chassis, and the vendor will refurbish everything in the back. Problem is, the things they don't refurbish are internal wiring and everything else, and we've got, corrosion issues. The bodies are all aluminum, and mag chloride seeps in around and gets underneath the paint. Rechassing is just not an option. Buying new is, I feel, the only cost-effective way to do it.
What year is the ambulance, Chief?
Which one? The one we're replacing? 2009.
I think it's.
So we currently have 3 ambulances.
Yes.
Can you just run through what the status of those 3 when they were purchased?
Of course.
And is this the oldest of the fleet?
Yes.
Of the fleet of 3?
Yes.
And this is the one that runs sort of most of the time?
Most of the time, yes.
Kinda, sorta?
Most of the time.
Yeah, okay.
It is challenging. Unfortunately, it has low miles, but it has been an albatross.
It's not a fun vehicle.
Well, it's not an effective vehicle. It's rough to drive. At over 60, you've got significant vibrations. We keep replacing things. I believe that it should have been totaled at the accident, but unfortunately at the time, I wasn't part of that decision and it was repaired.
And we definitely need 3 ambulances.
Yes.
Two for the crews that we have. And then how does the 3rd ambulance play into the operations?
So we have 3 ambulances. We have 2 here and then 1 at Station 4.
Right.
And so right around 20, I think last year it was 27% of our calls overlap. And so with the overlapping calls, by having an ambulance down there at Station 4, that's kind of our commercial center, if you will, that has the opportunity for volunteers or staff, whoever's out and about down in that area, will be able to grab that ambulance and respond to calls down there. The 2 ambulances here are for, the staffing here, your volunteer career. When the overlapping calls, we can move those out.
Right. So it's really, the 3rd ambulance is necessary if you ever have an equipment failure in one of the ambulances,
Yes.
the primary ambulances. But it also in response to that overlapping call situation where you have two out and maybe a third call comes in.
Correct, and we also rotate our ambulances, so the first of the month we rotate ambulances and we have to keep mileage, so we just don't hammer one and then have one with 100,000 miles. So the first of the month we rotate the ambulances, and there's 30 ambulances in the rotation. And I mean, a lot of times if there's a volunteer down near Station 4, and they'll take that and they'll respond to that call immediately.
So we get approval tonight. Can you take us through what happens next and sort of what we're looking at in terms of when we would get this vehicle online?
That could be the $10,000 question or $300,000 question, if you will. Right now, Dodge is no longer making chassis for first responders, for fire department. They don't have the outfitters. There's going to be new diesel emissions coming in 25, which is going to have a significant impact on nearly everything. Right now, Ford has a gasoline motor that a lot of fire departments are starting to do. The 7.3 liter is a big block. West Metro has, I believe, 6 of them in ambulances, and they've had great luck with them, a lot lower maintenance, and those are more readily available because they're not subject to the same emissions as the new diesel motors. So we're trying to spec it with that chassis. The big part of that is more readily available. Dodges will never, the Dodge dealer said we can expect the Dodge in 25 if we're going to go the Dodge route. Ford are a little more readily accessible, but their diesel motor right now is not quite as dependable, and this gas motor seems to be. With the research that Hojanowski did, our fleet manager, he talked to maintenance at West Metro, and they said they're ordering more of them. So I think their fleet's up to 8 of these chassis, which that seems, they drive them a lot, they drive them hard, so I'm hoping that is a good barometer on dependability. So we're going to go with that gas chassis, which is the first gas ambulance I think we've had since 2000. I don't even know, but hopefully this is going to be a more doable thing. Once we get this, we're going to place the order probably in the next couple weeks. And unfortunately right now, with the amount of shortages, the lead times are tough on everything. The goal is to have it in service by summer of 24.
And we think that's
what I'm hoping.
Reasonable. We're hoping for that.
I'm hoping
probably reasonable also.
I'm hoping for that, but we won't know until we actually, once we place the order and we get put in the queue, that's when we actually will start getting the lead times.
Yeah.
The vendors, they can speculate when we're going to get it, but nobody will give us a solid delivery date until we actually sign that purchase order.
2 points have been from, go ahead.
I do have a question, Chief. Does that 250,000 give you enough in the event that the purchase order, is there a contingency for an increase from the vendor? And does that 250 give you enough in the event that there is an increase?
That will give us about 50 of wiggle room, if you will. The grant should be right around 125. We just heard that they overcommitted on the grant. So hopefully they're not going to pull back and redo it. But if that does happen, I may come back and ask for the full purchase price. We budgeted for 300,000, but that 250 plus the 100 from the grant will give us a little bit of wiggle room.
Okay.
One of the reasons it's so high is we have to replace our pram, our auto loading stretcher, because the one in the 2009 it doesn't gel with the auto loaders on the new ones, and it's I believe that pram's almost 10 years old, so we can't even get parts for it, and that's, believe it or not, probably almost $30,000 for that thing.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? Last time, discussion on the motion. Call a question that the Elk Creek Fire Protection Board of Directors approve up to $250,000 for an ambulance purchase. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. All right, the next item is a motion by Director Newby for the public disclosure of consolidated related information. We have all had an opportunity to dissect this. Do I have a second on the motion?
You have a second.
I have a second on the motion. We will have discussion on the motion. Director Newby, as maker of the motion.
Yes, I've had a lot of conversations with the public, and there's a lot of desire, if you will, pent-up desire for disclosure on discussions that have gone on behind the scenes regarding consolidation. Some members of the public have requested information and then been given some information, but not had a complete disclosure. So I think in the interest of transparency to the public, what I'm asking for here in this motion is that we make available to the public all of the documents that we've received and reviewed under the pre-consolidation agreement. So that's the first item. The second item is I think the public would benefit from seeing all of the work product from Turner and Magellan Strategies. And then also, I know there's been a lot of discussions behind the scenes among the other district so-called consolidation committees. And there should be meeting minutes from those meetings. Certainly the chiefs have had brainstorming sessions. And the public would definitely benefit from disclosure of that information. So I'm asking for that on behalf of the public as well. So that's basically what we're asking for here.
All right, any other discussion on the motion?
I would like Attorney Camille to weigh in on the nature of this disclosure, given the breadth of information that's being requested.
Okay, as a point of information, Mr. Camille?
So ultimately, I think the initial question, and it sounds like it was potentially slightly revised from the draft as far as the scope, but what really is in, are they all, what you're requesting, are they in existence? Is there a record that is disclosable? And ultimately, who the keeper of that is, what the control is for that, and who ultimately would be charged with doing it and how long it would take. Ultimately, that's kind of the same analysis we run if you have a core request. It's kind of the same, is there a document that exists? Where might it be located? And then the time to actually, compile it and push it out. So I think that was really, like, from a practical standpoint, that was kind of my open question. Do we have an idea of how much it entails, how long it could potentially take, what's realistic? And ultimately, whether, the board, opts to, provide that direction. I think it just has to be realistic under the circumstances and have, some clarity to it.
Thank you.
Regarding the Magellan request for information, I am concerned about that request in that I understand the contracts and contract modifications and such. But my understanding of Magellan and even Turncore is that there's proprietary information and private information.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like it is our place to tell Magellan that they have to disclose proprietary information. And I am absolutely not comfortable disclosing private information. And so, while I agree with a portion of your motion, I do not agree with the Magellan portion.
Well, let me address your concern, and that is that we're not asking, number one, there's no ask here for proprietary information.
Okay. So you want the contracts, but not the...
Well, more than that. We're asking for, the public is asking for the methodology that was used by Magellan, specifically for the survey that they did.
So that should be in the scope of work provided by Magellan.
That's right, and so I think what the ask is of course not for any individual identifying information, no proprietary information, but there is, in these polls, there is a methodology. Like, how did you push the poll out? Who did you contact? What websites did you go to? What did you do, MMS, etc.? There's a whole list of methodologies. So I think that's what the public is asking for, and that's what they're after here. Certainly nothing proprietary or nothing private, no private information. So the methodology is very, very important because it goes to the validity of the survey, because the survey has been much touted as being the public wants consolidation. Well, I think there are valid questions as to the methodology, whether what it actually yielded. Was it valid or was it not valid?
Okay.
So that's Magellan. TermCore, I think again the same sort of structure applies. We're not asking for anything proprietary. I'm certainly not. And nothing that I've heard from the public is asking for any proprietary or private information. And then as far as, what's available, obviously you can't produce something that's not available. So I think that's, that's very clear. But what the public is asking for is discussions that the chiefs have had regarding their construction project plans. Why build a station up at in Morrison when the center of the population is here? Why relocate the personnel here in Station 1 to Station 2? Again, it would be logical to move them to Aspen Park or the center of Conifer, where the population is. So during their discussions, Director Pixley, Director Woods, the chiefs, the other directors, what were the conversations? What were the trade-offs? What was the rationale developed? None of this has been disclosed to the public, and it needs to be. It all not only needs to be, it has to be. It absolutely has to be. We have no choice.
Chief Ware, on the list of what Director Newby is asking for, what do you see as available? What are there specifically minutes for the consolidation meetings that have been held?
Sometimes there are, sometimes they're not. They're not public meetings.
Okay.
Sometimes there are discussions about fishing. No, I'm very serious. I mean, that's why there are two members from each board. Sometimes we discuss things, sometimes it goes straight to fishing. The discussions that the chiefs and I have, we don't keep minutes. I mean, this goes into the pre-developed for hearings and everything else. Not everything we do is a public meeting.
Absolutely.
All of the contracts, scopes of work, invoices, all that, that's very easy to produce. Emails, I think you wanted all the emails, that's easy. A lot of the stuff is easy to produce. Some of the things I don't know. Director White keeps some of them if there's something substantive where we do take notes.
Sometimes there's not. So I mean, that would be going through line by line and seeing what is out there. You know, the contract stuff and all of the financial stuff, that's very easy to produce.
Well, but I have a comment to make on that, because what is asked in this is not just the final contract. What's asked is all of the iterations that got us to that final contract. And I don't know that exists at this point.
I don't know either. I mean, that's going back into email and looking at where they are, and I wasn't the only one involved in that, and I mean, that's looking and seeing where it's at.
It's also looking at, you know, you have a Word document that's passed out to 12 people.
Mhm.
12 people, however many people. There's, you know, I'll make changes, Director Pixley will make changes, Director White will make changes. Those are tracked at the time that you produce that, but once you accept all of those changes, they're gone.
That is correct.
They aren't there.
That is correct.
It's just a final document. We don't have, I'm just saying it, we do not have iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, iteration 4 with comments by Pixley, comments by me, comments by Director White, comments by Chief Rogers. We don't have.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean,
We have a final document.
red line documents, once the changes are accepted, the red lines go away. There is no history, the histogram, if you will, that will pick that stuff up.
That's correct.
Director Pixley, would you be willing to modify your motion? Or I'm sorry, Director Newby. I'm reading and talking at the same time, which I should never do. Director Newby, would you be willing to I'm concerned with the breadth of the language in the motion. Would you be willing to modify it to have one motion to see all of the contracts and workflow and scope of work provided by Magellan and Transport? And then have a secondary motion that asks for copies, available copies of documents related to the consolidation. Within reason, because this is a burden. I mean, I understand and I agree that the information is relevant, but you have some very broad scope language that I don't know that the department can meet.
Well, again, to restate it, obviously, the department, the district, and our subcontractors can't produce something that they don't have. What we're asking for here, the intent is very clear. We're asking for what you have, work product, methodologies, etc., as I stated. So I think the motion as it stands, the intent is clear. I don't think it's overly broad. We're just asking for everything related to consolidation. We're not asking for proprietary. We're not asking for private information.
Section 3 is.
So look, we can pick this apart.
Okay, fair enough.
Hang on. We can pick this apart.
Director Newby, can she finish her point real quick?
It's okay, I will listen to him.
If you want to. But to answer your question, no, I am not willing to modify.
Okay.
Okay.
That answers my question.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? Last time, discussion on the motion. There was a motion made by Director Newby for a public disclosure of consolidated related information, seconded by Director Devaney. All in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Okay. Abstain.
Motion carries. All right.
Director Pixley, if I may make a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I believe that all of the contract work should be provided. for public review and the scope of work statement. I absolutely believe that that's all reasonable and attainable. I believe that any available minutes and documented discussion items should be made available. I am opposed to specifically item 3, all documents, information, data, and you go on to, I mean, it's 15 lines of very broad stroke. I think that puts an undue burden on this, that, in my opinion, is the broad strokes put an undue burden to provide something and go down a rabbit hole to look for everything there possibly is.
Well, that's where we disagree, isn't it?
Okay.
So, if I may,
Absolutely.
As president, what I am going to do is I'm going to take back your concerns to, we have a meeting on, when? Tuesday. Next Tuesday. And what I'm going to do is we are going to start to provide the information possible and that as best we can. And we're to address some of the concerns that you and your constituents have. I respect the fact that the motion did not pass, but in the same light, I also respect the fact, as Director Devaney just mentioned, that we can get more information out for everyone. All right, next item is...
Let me make a comment here, additional comment to your comment. And that is that's fine for you to go ahead and do that.
Thank you. All right.
But let me finish. We will get this information because I am going to, and the public is going to request formally through Cora that this broad level of information is going to be disseminated.
Excellent. All right. Next item of information is our second public comment. Would you be so kind? Thank you. Appreciate it. All your friends left there. All right. First is Dr. Whitehead.
I have no questions.
All right. Thank you, sir. Second is Ms. Tannenbaum.
Okay. So, what we have just seen is a perfect example of why the proposal needs to be split. We've talked about the proposal having two issues on it, and as we've just seen and witnessed all together, Devaney and Newby, is that how you say it?
Yes, Newby.
While you agreed with some of his disclosures, you didn't agree with all of them. So when you do this, with this proposal, it's putting the voters, and I don't think there is any instance that the public, a democracy would say that voter fatigue is a concern. It gives us our voice. It allows us to participate in what happens with our tax dollars that have significantly increased over the last year. So I think that this was a perfect example of why these two issues on this proposal need to be separate on the ballot, so that we can get a firm decision from the public who is providing the money for them. And then I would say, can we find more grants and up the efforts that the chief has done, which I think is fantastic, using grants. There's tons of grants out there. Grants.gov. I'll help, look, I'll volunteer to help find them if that's what you need, since you may not have time to do it. And I think that alleviates the public's cost as well. I know that there's grants out there. I'm a researcher. I know there's grants. And the last one, how are the changes on these for the consolidation being sent between the directors? If it's email, then we have our answer to tracking. What program is being used? If you guys are using Word, it tracks changes. Again, as a researcher, I can go back into my Word program and I can see what dates and times I changed things. So more should be available than what you think. And I think deadlines need to be set. You can't say that you're gonna put this information out there and then give it to us 2 hours before an election or after the election. I have not heard any deadlines set for any of the issues that are being presented here tonight.
30 seconds.
And I also have not heard deadlines on previous meetings. It seems that you're still talking about the same things, but no deadlines have been set. So I think the board needs to focus on being accountable to us, the taxpayer, to set deadlines, and if they can't be met, they can't be met. But at least there's a target, there's a goal. It shows that you have intention on giving us information. But for these meetings, absolutely, these need to be sent out a week before.
Thank you, Ms. Tannenbaum.
You're so welcome.
All right, that's the last item agenda. We have nobody else on public comment. And,
That was actually at the last meeting, I didn't have a chance to sign up, but I'd like to speak on the subject, I guess.
all right, we'll go right ahead.
Okay, I brought this up many times before in this meeting. All I have basically for current income statements is the ones that sometimes are provided on the meeting agendas, sometimes they're not. So I collect as many as I got. I have the first 6 months. And I ask these questions to get the same dumb looks and weird answers. So I finally took it to my CPA and had him look at these numbers. And even if you only track admin for the month-to-month and year-to-date, there's about $218,000 that is unaccounted for, just in admin. And I think that these income statements are incorrect, the ones that you've been given board every month, because there's no way that the monthly total cannot equal the year-to-date. And every single account is off by tens of thousands. So I think that needs to be addressed. And this is the same thing I get. This way of communicating that you've established for us, that we're supposed to be able to confront our board and get answers back in a live meeting. And I think it's terrible, the control over the board and over the public that you've taken on this group. That we don't get to interact with our board anymore. We just say our stuff and you look at me and you're like, well, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And my CPA said, you know what you should do? You should have this board do a forensic audit on this year's books, because there's something wrong. There's something very wrong with these numbers. These income statements don't produce these numbers. There's other income statements other than the ones that you're giving the board every month that produce that number. That's all I gotta say. Deal with it. We had a big problem in another district with a bunch of the financials, and a guy went to jail over it, and here we're sitting in the same position, and nobody's looking.
And pushing for consolidation as well,
That way we can recategorize and nobody will ever know.
Nobody will know.
to waive our state legislation rights, to accountability.
Are you done, Mr. Department? So,
I'm not done. I'm not done.
You have 7 seconds.
I think his,
I got next meeting and the meeting after that.
I think it was just for this.
All right, thank you all very much, Mr. Bartlett. And as we go through these, we try to address the issues that are brought up by the public, and this gives everybody an opportunity to speak and get us out of here at a respectful time. With that in mind, is there a motion to adjourn? With second. Director Baker, and all in favor? Against?
Doesn't go anywhere.
Abstain?
Abstain?
Yes, fine, yes. Motion to adjourn. Yes, please. by
All
then.
right, I think that motion passed.
Yes, it
All right. Okay, at 8:30.